if you want to, drive innovation in a large company, there's no, you know, one set of rules that you can apply everywhere. One of the things you have to recognize is that, innovation is funded from profitable operation of the core. The leaders of the company that commit to this path need to be in it for the long haul. No one individual can do these things. It's really about trying to have the right group of people, put them in the right environment, and then, it's together you can affect the change that you need to affect. I'm spending more time in my garden, getting the vegetables ready. The apricot and the plum trees are just about ready to bloom.
Welcome to the 8 Growth Ventures podcast. Today, we're honored to have Minas Apelian, a standout leader in corporate venturing. He was a major force behind innovation and sustainability at Saint-Gobain, which he retired from in September 2023. Minas has led the investment team and made strategic investments in various sectors, including construction tech and prop tech. We'll delve into Minas's previous role at Nova by Saint-Gobain and his insights on strategic investments. Get ready for a session full of inspiring stories and forward-thinking ideas. I'm your host, Hamlet Azarian. Minas, thank you for joining us today. It's really an honor and pleasure to have you. I'm really excited about our conversation and the amazing insights you'll be able to provide to our listening audience.
Well, Hamlet, thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really happy to have this chat with you.
Perfect. So, Minas, what we like to do is, as I've kind of mentioned to you before, and our listening audience is a diverse group. It's filled with early stage founders, typically seed and Series A, as well as some VCs as well that listen in. So what we normally do is just to kind of go through your history, your journey, and really some of the lessons you've learned along the way and provide insights so it can help the future leaders of tomorrow to make sure that they have something to reflect upon and learn from and be able to go through that. So I'm really excited on your particular journey. So let's kind of start off there. You started in chemical engineering of all things, and eventually you ended up in a corporate venture at one of the largest companies in the world, right? So tell me a little bit about your early days in chemical engineering and how do you feel that helped you prepare yourself for what you ended up doing later on in your career?
Yeah. So, the first 14 years or so of my career were strictly in technical roles. So I am a chemical engineer. I started in R&D with a large petrochemical company, Mobil Oil Corporation, now part of ExxonMobil after Exxon and Mobil merged, I don't know how many years ago. And, I would say my journey, Hamlet, was one where, I never dreamt or I never really aspired to be in the role I finished my career in leading a venture capital group. I started working on very technical projects. And I would say maybe, as a chemical engineer, through my journey, it gave me the opportunity to work on a lot of different types of projects and in many different functional roles. I worked on, commercialization of a new technology. It was my first project in my career. It took me to Asia. I spent time in Mobil's refinery in Singapore. So kind of bit of an international exposure. I led some small teams, so got that experience. And then when I left Mobil and joined J.M. Huber Corporation, which is also a fairly large family-owned company, I started in an engineering role. And then, I got involved in leading a business development function. I got involved in leading new product development and innovation. And ultimately, I became the general manager of a business unit selling ingredients to the nutritional and pharmaceutical industry. So, I would say that, a chemical engineering background kind of gave me the opportunity to take on this range of different functional roles, which really gave me a broad perspective on, different industries, how different, how to bring value in different ways. And then I think that ultimately in my venture role, I was able to look and meet entrepreneurs trying to do different things. And it really helped me to understand, broadly what challenges they faced, what we could do in our corporate venture group to help them to succeed. And so really it was that broad perspective, I think, that came with that background in chemical engineering. But, I didn't major in chemical engineering with the idea that I would somehow be the leader of a corporate venture capital group someday. That really, I couldn't connect those dots.
And I'm excited to hear that how that eventually happened. But let's kind of stay with that tack here. So here you were at Mobil Oil. Now, it's safe to say one of the biggest companies in the world, or one of
It
the
was a
largest,
pretty
right?
big oil company. Yeah, it was.
What's burning
One
up
of
there?
yeah.
So you're fresh out of school, you know, you have your degree, and you're in this huge giant corporation, and you're going about, and they're giving you incredible opportunity, right? So you're developing some, it seems like some skills that eventually led on to help you grow and lead a team or a company within a company. Is that fair to say? Is that a good summation of it? Or
I would say, Hamlet, one of the things that, if I go back to my time at Mobil, I mean, I can point to, different technical projects and different things I worked on, but probably the greatest education I took away from the 10 and a half years I was there was in really, you know, working with a broad range of different people and figuring out, how to be an effective part of a team. I mean, if I'm honest with myself, those early years, I mean, I was really focused on just doing the technical job. You're kind of trained in engineering school. Problems have right and wrong answers, and you're just trying to drive to a solution. And I probably wasn't the easiest guy to work with. I would say I was more focused on just, getting to the technical solution, doing it efficiently, doing it right, and not so much focused on bringing the, others along with me. And I think that, some hard lessons that I learned during that period of time. But I think, gaining the appreciation for the power of a team, that everyone has something to contribute, that it's not about, frankly, that idea of being the smartest person in the room is something that I kind of laugh at now. I think I sometimes encounter people that kind of think they're the smartest person in the room, and I learned early on that if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're not. you know because you miss the insight that everyone has areas where they have expertise that's important. And really, to be effective and successful and leading a team and influencing an organization and making a difference, particularly as you go into more senior positions, it's really all about the people and your ability to inspire them and your ability to put them in a position where they can be successful. And that's something that you know I learned through a lot of mistakes, and it took a lot of self-reflection. But I think that time at Mobil, when I was kind of becoming, trying to build my leadership foundation, that was probably the one thing that I carried with me that has been the most valuable through my career. And I'm not suggesting that I'm particularly good at it, but it's certainly something I recognize to be really important, and I try very hard I've always tried very hard to build a strong team, to build a cohesive team, and to build a team with broad perspectives where everyone can contribute something. There's no, it's not about stripes and what level you're at and what position you're in. It's trying to bring everyone together and give everyone a chance to make a contribution.
I love that. So you came in with a lot of great hard skills, and it looks like you developed and used that opportunity being in such a large organization to develop really your leadership and soft skills, and being able to kind of translate that. And more importantly, what I'm hearing is allowing to provide a safe environment where everyone's viewpoint or everyone's thought has a place, and that's become sort of the central part of your leadership style. Is that
I,
fair?
I believe deeply in that, and it's something I aspire to. And I don't pretend to be perfect. I think there are moments, I'm sure, that when I'm under stress, and if you talk to my team, they would say, you can be pretty stubborn, because everybody has those, as their own kind of personal tendencies that, you have to manage. You can't change who you are, but you can certainly manage who you are. And I do think maybe to some extent you can evolve in how you work and behave with people. And that's something I'm, if I've become a better leader in that way, well, that's something that, I put a lot of effort and work into. And I hope that if you were to talk to members of my team, they would have felt that.
That's amazing. So here you are so let's fast forward. And I know you've had an incredible career. So you're 10 years into it at Exxon. From there, where did you transition from? Exxon Mobil. You're with Mobil. Then where did you
Yeah.
transition to?
Yeah,
Where did
so I took a position with a family-owned company, a couple of $1 billion in revenue, so not small, but a company that had been around for about 120 years or so, called JM Huber Corporation.
you?
And for the first couple of years, I was the engineering director for the company globally in the specialty materials division. And one of the products the company made at the time that it was a leader in was the abrasive that goes into toothpaste. So it's a kind of a silica product that if you brush your teeth with anything made by Procter and Gamble or Colgate or GlaxoSmithKline, that's how those toothpastes are made. So we made those products, and the company got a new president and a new CEO, and he really wanted to focus on innovation, and somehow he thought I'd be a good person to lead that effort, and so he called me in and asked me to take on a role leading a small business development team and trying to improve the effectiveness of the company and innovation, new product development. And that's really what kind of took my career on the trajectory of going into more of an innovation leadership role and more business development roles. There was a time where I was leading a team of like 20 plus people, trying to develop, adjacent strategies to kind of innovate and move into adjacent spaces. And it was super fun, super rewarding, super hard.
Is this
I
new
learned.
products or is it also even new business units? Or is
It
it a
was new businesses, new products. It was really about trying to broaden the view of innovation from developing new products to more business model innovation where it could come from anywhere. And it was really kind of I don't have an MBA, but I would say my education in business and business skills and sort of business leadership came through that role, kind of
amazing?
learning by doing.
Yeah. How big was the organization? And your unit was only 20 people. So I'm trying to understand the size and what you guys were trying to execute with it.
Yeah, so the organization as a whole was a few thousand people globally. It was a global organization, and our charter was trying to come up with a methodology that we could implement. Kind of at the time this was going on, Six Sigma was
Right.
a kind of evolving methodology for process improvement and cost productivity improvement and cost reduction. And frankly, I had led that within the company as well in my engineering role. And so it was about how do we create this kind of competency in innovation where people can begin to broaden their perspective on how to grow the business, how to improve profitability, how to drive profitable growth in different ways. And we work with some outside consultants that helped us there, and ultimately, we developed some new offerings in the food and nutrition market, which was completely new to the company. But we had some small product lines and competencies that fit there, made some bolt-on acquisitions, and ultimately put a business unit together that I ultimately became the general manager of, trying to grow in this space. And we ultimately, had some plants registered with the FDA, and we're making kind of OTC ingredients and doing that kind of, while, we were a small part of a large company, but trying to create that sort of innovative, profitable kind of new business that
Right.
could give the company an opportunity to grow long term in the future.
So this is phenomenal, by the way, because this is probably your early days of really understanding how to get. It might be a new business unit to be able to disrupt what's going on in the normal processes of a corporation or fit properly into a company, right? So it's hands on. You're learning this. Um, can you give me, because I can only imagine there's 1,000 people, there's processes in place that there is real. It's gonna you're saying, hey, no, the way you guys have been doing it has been great, but like let's try this. Let's try this
Yeah.
newer way, this
Mhm.
newer approach. Uh, if you had to reflect back on that time period, right? And this is more for startups, or this is really geared towards anyone who might be doing sort of, let's say, corporate entrepreneurship in this role. Reflecting back on it, what do you think is one or two or three things that really make this successful that you should be aware of going into this, and like, hey, these are the roadblocks, but if you can overcome these roadblocks, this will make this
Yeah,
you
yeah,
just,
yeah.
become successful?
So, I think Hamlet, there's probably a couple of things that if I could go back and do differently, I wish I could have. I mean, it's hard to do that in retrospect, but one of them is really around understanding the culture of the company. And, there's no formula for this. You know, if you want to, drive innovation in a large company, there's no, you know, one set of rules that you can apply everywhere. You really have to adapt the approach to what's going to work within the culture of that organization because, you know, it's got to be something that penetrates deeply in the mindset of the leadership, in the mindset of the people, and you have to be able to do it while you manage the existing business. And I think one of the things you have to recognize is that innovation is funded from profitable operation of the core, and so you can't lose focus on the core in trying to drive innovation. At the same time, innovation needs a bit of space and a different management approach than the core, and so somehow you've got to, within the culture of the company, find the right way to give the innovation activity the space that it needs and measure it in a way that makes sense for what you're trying to do, but not in a way that distracts from the ability of the company to drive profitability in the core, because that's what they have to coexist. So
So
I think that
don't disrupt the core, but protect the innovation enough so it could get nurtured and grow and be able to
exactly.
eventually come be part of the core, right? Or
Exactly. I think that's the approach, and how you do that. It depends on the type of business you're in, the market you're in. Innovation can take in some industries, in some markets, months to be able to see the results. In some cases, many years, right? So you really have to adapt the approach. So that understanding that they have to coexist, you need to manage them differently, but you have to fit that to the culture of the organization. I think is the one thing. And the other is that leadership is key. I mean, leadership, these are not easy things to do. I mean, anyone trying to start a company, trying to disrupt anything, understands that, this is a very challenging thing to try to do. Many things have to go right, and a lot of things can go wrong. And so the leaders of the company that commit to this path need to be in it for the long haul. It's not to say that you just blindly invest and you don't demand results. I think you have to demand results, but I think you have to you know measure things in a way that makes sense, and I think you have to give time for the teams to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, make adjustments, and go on. And I think there were times where we probably didn't give enough time to see things through.
right.
And it's complicated, right? I mean, there's a lot of different factors, and I wish I could give you more context, but it gets into some stuff I'd rather not talk about because it's into the weeds of the company. But I think that you know understanding up front at a senior leadership level that this is a journey that's going to take time and it requires commitment. You really need to be committed to it. I think is important. And maybe if there's a third thing, it's you really need to inspire the organization. People have to want to be part of it, and to do that you need to really you have to provide the right incentives, and you really have to make it something that helps advance people's career. And you need to it's a lot of competency building, it's a lot of change management. Ultimately you want to change the culture. I mean, I think I said you have to fit within the culture of the company, but what you want to do is to change that culture, but in a way that the culture can accept. I
Right.
think the analogy is, for me, it's like trying to mold something like a rigid piece of clay. You can move it, but it's kind of slow, steady pressure that moves it. If you do something too hard, you're going to crack it, you're going to break it, and once you do that, it's very hard to put it back together. And so that kind of finesse, and there's a nuance to that. I think that's important. I reflect back on the teams that I led, and there were some incredibly talented people that I had the opportunity to work with. And all of them went on to be very successful in their career. And I think it was that and kind of going back to that importance of the team, no one individual can do these things. It's really about trying to have the right group of people, put them in the right environment, and then, it's together you can affect the change that you need to affect. So, all those things were kind of important experiences for me. When I started at Saint-Gobain, it was, a new company and a new industry. I'd never worked in building and construction before. I was in an R&D role. I hadn't been in an R&D role probably in 15 years. And so, all that stuff was more all that experience and that knowledge, I think, was invaluable to be able to help me in the things that we accomplished while in my 10 and a half years or so at Saint-Gobain.
Amazing. So let's actually get into that. Here, how did that begin? How did that opportunity come around? It sounds like you, at this point in your career, had now developed R&D. You were leading it in this organization. And when did that transition to Saint-Gobain come around?
It's funny, I was with Mobil for 10 and a half years. I was with Huber for 14 and a half. And I came to a point where, it was sort of like, around 50 years old, time, looking for a change. Like, what am I going to do the last part of my career? And I was kind of ready and open for a change. And, an opportunity came to join Saint-Gobain as the head of North American R&D for their construction products division called Certainty. It's a large organization. Probably, today the revenue is north of $5 billion. I'm not sure exactly what it is. So a very large organization. And, something was a tough decision for my wife and I. We kind of spent a lot of time. We had roots where we were, but, I was ready to try something new. I admit to you, it was a little scary, kind of joining a new company, kind of reestablishing yourself and building the relationships. It's a large French company, and, I was based in the US. And so, it was something where I came in with, kind of a plan, but I knew I had a lot to learn. And so, it was about kind of opening a new door and seeing where it led.
Very cool. So when you came into this role, this wasn't the Metro unit yet, right? This
No, it wasn't. So it was North American R&D. So, Certainty at the time had, 5 different product lines, and each was a standalone business, and there was no kind of central R&D organization. So each had its own R&D. They were completely independent, and they were pretty independent from Saint-Gobain's corporate global R&D. So my job was to kind of pull together this organization, like build a central R&D unit, try to figure out how these different groups could work together to try to do something new and innovative, and then, become more part of the global Saint-Gobain R&D structure, and try to leverage and become part more of that global organization of, like 5,000 people. So that was the challenge that I came in and
you're you're like, oh yeah, it was nothing. You're like simple. That's pretty massive challenge.
It was. I look back on it, it's like maybe a little bit crazy to think that was something I could do, but again, it was really about working with the team, and honestly, we had to make some changes. I mean, the team that I started with and the team I wound up having after 8 years in that role were pretty different. But there were some, after the first 3 months, you start everything with kind of a diagnostic. Okay, how do I, learn about this company's culture? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And I remember after 3 months, I had a plan. I had a plan of what I wanted to do, and it was really about the idea of trying to find common denominator of things that we could pull together from the different parts of the organization, leveraging competencies in the global corporate group, and then linking them with future trends and opportunities in the construction industry, where we could address some of the problems that everyone recognized were important, and they were about sustainability and improving productivity in the construction industry, trying to bring better functionality and a better environment within buildings based on the products that are used to construct it. And so, putting an organization together that could.
So for people who don't know what Saint-Gobain does, can you give like a quick one-liner?
Sure.
The materials for pretty much office buildings, whatever we kind of see out there, right? Like
Saint-Gobain is I believe the largest construction materials company in the world. The total revenue of the company is nominally around 50 billion US dollars. It's based in France. It operates in countries all around the world in every continent. And, we make everything from insulation, wallboard, roofing, siding, ceiling systems, mortars, stucco, cement, admixtures, you name it. So it's this full range of construction materials around the world. And in Europe, Saint-Gobain is also one of the largest building materials distributors as well. So think, Home Depot, but in Europe, it's very much different in each European country. And so that's what the company does. It also
So
has.
you came in as a certain role, and then eventually you transitioned into their corporate venturing role. Which did that exist, or that didn't exist? Or
Yes, it did. So Saint-Gobain had a venture group which is called Nova, which it started in 2006, I believe. And when I joined at the beginning of 2013, I was in the R&D role in North America. And what happened is the individual that was leading the venture group left the company toward the end of 2014, and they asked me to take on the role in addition to my R&D role. So in addition to that R&D role, I guess they kind of liked what I was doing.
They're like, "Hey, you're doing great at the $5 billion version. Why don't you take this on too?"
Pretty much. And actually, my first reaction was, no. I mean, how am I going to do both these jobs? This is impossible. But, I went a couple trips to Paris, sat down with the executives that were, that wanted to do this. And they kind of explained to me why this was a good idea and promised to give me some help. And I said, okay, why not? I've always, loved innovation. I didn't know anything about startups. I'd never been in a venture role. I mean, it was all going to be new to me. And, at the end, it was like, why not? And at the time, it was a scouting group. The way Nova worked, I mean, it was scouting. It was trying to find synergies that we could build with startups and try to encourage co-development and sort of partnerships between businesses.
Were they always looking for startups? Was that like the mission? Was it like, hey, let's go find early startups and let's figure out which ones are a good
at the
strategic
time,
partnership for us? It was.
it was sort of like that, Hamlin. I mean, at the time, it was a relatively small group of people. The venture team was like 6 people globally, so it wasn't a lot of scale. There was a one person in Shanghai. There were like 3 people in Paris and 3 people in the United States, based in Boston. So, and then it was me, like nominally 25% of my time. So it was a relatively small group. And, at the time it was, they would do like 4 or 5 partnerships a year. They had made a couple of investments in venture funds and, mixed success with that, and really had not made any investments in startup companies. So
If you took a step back, what do you think was the reason for it? Like, what was the driving force, and why was this strategically a really good decision?
So I think in terms of why Saint-Gobain wanted to start a venture group, I think it was the recognition that, there was a lot of innovation happening outside the company. Maybe a bit of a recognition that, within the company, it was hard to do really transformational things. Saint-Gobain is almost a 360-year-old company.
Wow.
So, it started as a glass company. Saint-Gobain was started by King Louis XIV to make the mirrors and windows for the Versailles Palace. And all the glass in Versailles was made by Saint-Gobain. The company was founded in 1665. So, it's like, and so that you think, okay, big French company, a bit of a dinosaur. But actually, there's a kind of a deep kind of belief in the company that it's really critical that we develop the future, because, the company that's been around for 350 years has reinvented itself many, many times. And so there's a bit of the DNA that recognizes that, if we're going to be around another 350 years, we have to put the seeds in place for the businesses that we're going to be operating 25, 50 years from now.
Right.
And they're probably not
very long-term view, right? Because they've seen it. They've seen something be great and go away, and a new cycle come, and it over and over. The history of all of that. That's
I mean, Saint-Gobain was celebrating its 100th anniversary around the time of the U.S. Revolutionary War. So,
Wow.
this is like, puts things into perspective of what we're talking about here. So, this idea of reinvention, I think, is really something deep within the company's DNA. And so, startups were really kind of becoming more of a thing, through the 70s and 80s and 90s. And so there was that time where, companies were beginning to start venture groups, and Saint-Gobain wanted to, but at the time it was, I would say, not really stepping in with 2 feet to say, we're going to start investing in startups. It was more to say, we know startups are important. We know that they can benefit from the competencies we have within the organization and access to, those competencies, markets, customers that we can provide.
The
So how can we
scale,
try
the
to,
distribution, the
yeah,
knowledge. Oh, so
yeah.
much.
So how do we put that together in a way that benefits both parties? And I would say all through the time and to today, that's still a core element of the principles on which we do that. I say I have to be careful. I'm retired, so it's not something not we anymore. But how Saint-Gobain does venture does manages venture capital. It's really about win-win partnerships, and it's really core to the values of how venturing is done. But at the time, it was it was doing like 4 deals a year. I mean, I remember in 2015, it was the first year I led the organization. We did 6 deals, and everyone was like, "Wow, that's a lot." That's a lot. And my last year in 2023, I think we did closer to 50 when you count
Wow.
investments and partnerships. So there was a dramatic change, but that really came from you know transitioning from more of a scouting group to one where we were active investors and investing in minority stakes in startups.
So for some startups who've never thought of this as a viable path, right? Most startups think, hey, I can go to an accelerator, and from an accelerator, I'll get a little bit of seed funding. From there, the traditional path, let's say,
Yeah.
in the startup world. Um, at what would you, for most startups who are not actively looking and seeing if there's a corporate venture arm and potentially in their industry, right? Like, what is some advice you would give to them, and how to go and seek or even get noticed by someone like Nova, even if they are even construction tech, right?
Yeah.
Sure, it's not as easy as that. Let me just send a cold email out to you and hopefully you'll respond.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me tell you a bit about how we manage our deal flow and how we, met startups. I mean, we have a lot of relationships with incubators around the world. My first introduction to an incubator was a Boston-based group called Greentown Labs, which is the largest clean tech incubator in the United States. And Greentown Labs, we went there on an innovation learning day. It was actually before I was leading the venture capital group. In my role as the head of R&D, we visited there, and I was completely blown away with the facility. It was kind of a combination incubator, accelerator, and makerspace. They had a huge prototyping area where the startups were. It was hard tech. They were building things, and I found it incredibly inspirational. And so we, at the time, established a relationship with Greentown Labs where we became a sponsor, but also we took on some prototyping space and had our own engineers working there to try to meet the startups. And so, I would say, that classic approach of, working through incubators and accelerators is something good to do, because I think the good corporate venture capital groups are actively working with those incubators and accelerators in the markets that they're focused on, and it's a great way to meet them. And I think that it's not about corporate venture capital versus classic venture capital or other things. I think it's very much more an and. I think both have value. I think what you can expect from, a VC is financial investment. It's kind of, venture discipline in driving to outcomes. What corporate venture capital brings is more of that strategic link. It can give you access to a perspective around what's going to work and what's not going to work, competencies that can help to dramatically accelerate your ability to test assumptions in your business plan. And capital that is not so much focused on a good exit, although of course as a venture investor, we want a good exit too, but it's more around improving your business model, improving your product, and kind of trying to take that forward as a partner as a potential customer, as a potential supplier. We had all those relationships with startups that we work with. And so I think that we tried to very much work in a way that brought value to the startup company. We were very much focused on, are we the first of all, are we the right investor for this company? Do we bring something to the table? If it's just money, well, a good startup can get money from anywhere. So we were always focused on bringing more than just financial investment. It was also bringing something else that could help accelerate the development of the startup's business model. And
I
then it
love
was
it. So
really a focus on,
it sounds like you guys were active investors, right? You were able to nurture the startup and be able to provide it not only capital, but insights and ways of helping them scale up and grow. Like if I'm a startup listening in, this sounds like the perfect investor. Like here I am. If I'm selling to this market, I'm getting one of the largest companies in the world. What is the downside? Is there something that they should
yeah.
be like thinking about? Because there's always the good sounds great, but what are the downsides of it?
There's definitely challenges. So, as the corporate venture arm, we're kind of the liaison between the startup and businesses that, have those competencies and resources that I'm referring to. I mean, we can provide the capital, but that strategic fit is coming with the business somewhere in the group. And so we try to facilitate that. Now, trying to build that relationship is not easy. And businesses are much more focused on their operational priorities and operational results. I mean, oftentimes, it was a journey for us to try to educate our own internal businesses on, working with a startup is not like working with a corporate, like
You're like it's like clay. We gotta work on this a
yeah,
little bit slowly.
where we want to just take control everything, right? We're Saint-Gobain. We're just gonna take
why,
control
why
of
why
everything.
why aren't they doing what I asked them to do? No, no, that's not hard.
Why don't they just give me like exclusivity on everything they have, right? What's the problem? We're a big company. So, this is the challenge. And I would say that, across, there are many corporate venture capital groups, right? And many of them are strategically oriented. I would say for the startup and the entrepreneur, you need to be mindful of the culture of the company that you're working with. If it's a company that is kind of corporation first, and really tries to kind of maximize the benefit to their company in every relationship with every startup, then they're just not going to be a good partner for you. Then there's going to be a big price to get those, to get the value. But if the company is more open-minded and is willing to kind of give a little bit and recognize that by being a good partner for a startup, it's going to open, opportunities to work with many really good startups. And so the cumulative benefit is much higher if they kind of, give a little bit in each relationship. Then I think you can have something that is far more in the spirit of win-win and much more beneficial. And we always try to do that. And, not with 100% success. I mean, there are parts of our organization where we weren't always able to do that, but it's what we always aspire to. And I think in time, some of the positive examples within our company became an inspiration for other businesses to be able to, adjust their approach and to get involved. And I would say when I started leading the venture group, trying to get businesses involved in talking to a startup wasn't so easy to do. But by the end, I mean, we had businesses bringing us startups, and a lot of our deal flow came from our own internal business units that were meeting startups at, a trade show or at a local university. And, they were bringing a lot of things to us, because they were, excited and they were motivated to be able to engage with those startups and explore new things and take things forward. So I think that was one of the important things that we accomplished over the years was creating more of that openness across the company to be able to work with startups in a way that was more mutually beneficial.
Yeah, I mean the numbers clearly stated too, right? You started with 6, and towards the end you were doing 50 deals.
Yeah, and we counted the partnerships as well as the investments. I think that was something I felt was important because I didn't want it to be just about investing. I wanted to be that the investment came with some kind of a partnership that was mutually beneficial so that we could really, bring that value that I thought we could uniquely bring. if it's just about investing in money, okay, well, you know, anybody can do that. But investing and helping, that may be something that is, I wanted that to be more to a part of our venture group's value proposition.
When you reflect back on all the deals that you have, and if we is there like one you can talk to specifically, or you're open to
Yeah.
discussing that you felt like went well, and what are some lessons learned from that, that if you mind sharing for the listening audience?
Yeah, I mean, there's one I can definitely speak to. So, that relationship at Greentown Labs, the first time we visited there, it was like the spring of 2014, and a couple of startups pitched to us, and one of them was a startup called CrowdComfort. And what these guys, they had won an innovation competition locally in the Boston area. I think it was out of MIT, and they developed this simple application where they could put sensors, and they were like a simple QR code in every room of a building, and get feedback from building occupants on any kind of problem in the building.
Wow.
HVAC is not working, this chair is broken, this faucet's leaking, whatever it is, and communicate more effectively with building management to be able to resolve the issues in a more efficient way. And we thought, given that we're trying to improve the environment for building occupants, it's a really interesting fit. So we actually piloted their application in our R&D center in Massachusetts, as well as our corporate headquarters outside of Philadelphia. And then we made a small investment in the company, and then we made a larger investment in the company. And they began to grow. And what I love about this story is that the company kind of got to about $2 million of ARR, and we're kind of stuck there. They were having trouble breaking through. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, I mean, they had this huge disruption. I mean, you can imagine now their whole business model is based on providing a better experience for building occupants. Well, nobody's in buildings anymore. So, what are we going to do? And so, I remember having a conversation with the CEO and his co-founder. It's like, they were really concerned, but they had this idea that they recognized that, well, people are going to have to eventually reoccupy these buildings. And when they do that, there's going to be a need to kind of manage occupancy and, spacing and sanitization. And so they began saying, how can we take advantage of what we put in to solve some of those challenges? They came up with a couple of really slick ideas, on cleaning maps and other things. And all of a sudden, they had a huge interest from companies that are trying to bring employees and occupants safely back into their buildings. And, out of this kind of crucible um, my business is really under siege, they found a new avenue for growth, and they essentially doubled their ARR in 2021, 2022, 2023. I think today they're north of 10 million of ARR, and they opened a door in managing cleaning in educational institutions. So they had a kind of a beachhead customer in the Chicago public school system, where they implemented CrowdComfort through the entire network. And what's interesting about it is that through that kind of pivot, they moved further away from the strategic fit with
Alignment that you
Saint-Gobain.
guys had initially invested in, right? So
Right. So, we were able to help them. We helped them to grow. But at the end, we kind of recognized that, okay, well, we're not, the right, and I was on the board of the company. And I ultimately stepped out of my board seat to, allow them to repopulate with people that would be more able to help them grow strategically. I think at the end, Saint-Gobain will have a very profitable, exit from Saint-Gobain, from CrowdComfort, because of their tremendous growth. I think we helped them through their kind of difficult period. They certainly helped us learn about, that management of building occupancy and engaging our end customer, that's the occupant of a building. But it was kind of, our relationship with them evolved, and I think that's natural. I mean, every startup, as they pivot and as they grow, I mean, that strategic fit can get stronger, it can get weaker. This is a case where it got weaker, and I think it's I'm kind of happy about that, because I think we benefited, they benefited, and ultimately we were able to let them do what was right for them, which I think was critical. And I hope that in the future, that'll be a story that the venture team can tell other startups and kind of, show them that, we're not just in this for us alone. I mean, we're looking at this broadly, and if things evolve in a way where we can help you more, well, then we're going to invest more and get closer. But if things evolve in a way where you need your independence, well, we're gonna do that as well.
Oh my God, I love that. So the maturity of you guys as investors, right? To realize that, hey, by the way, you made the incredible pivot. You have now traction in this area, but we want to be active investors, and we really don't have the expertise here, and it makes a lot more sense for us to take a step back and allow you to find someone else that can come and help accelerate the growth. I love hearing that, and it's wonderful to see that when you guys say you're truly active investors, what this means in the good and in the bad, or even when you cannot provide, if the organization has shifted to be able to do that.
Now, internally, if all our stories were like that, then I think the corporate leadership in Saint-Gobain,
They're like, "What are you doing? You're investing in the wrong business."
But we have plenty of stories where things went. There's actually another startup that we met through an acceleration program at Greentown Labs, where it was at the time just the two co-founders, and they had a concept on how to redesign metal framing to dramatically improve the profitability of how you frame, you know, an interior room in a commercial project. And, we kind of funded them through the acceleration program. We gave them some seed money. They were able to demonstrate like a 15x productivity improvement through their system, and incorporated some VR into it with like broader scope. And Saint-Gobain has made some sizable investments into the company. It's a San Francisco-based company called Hyperframe. And I think they're now probably around 15, 20 people. And we do sit on the board. Saint-Gobain sits on the board of that startup. And that's one where I can definitely see that there will be a long-term, strategic partnership. And there are many other examples, but, they're not all like the CrowdComfort one, but that, I thought that one was a special story. So
If I'm a construction tech entrepreneur right now, and I want to get it, if I want to get noticed by you guys or Saint-Gobain or just in general a corporate venture arm, outside of accelerators, is there any other advice you would give them? Like is there a way that they can position themselves, or they can highlight their pitch deck in a certain way that would potentially catch a corporate VC's interest, or is it just like business as usual? It's the same type of pitch deck. Everything else is kind of the same.
yeah, so I think that today Saint-Gobain's venture team is like 15 people globally, and the job of each of those people is to go and identify startups that have a high level of strategic fit with Saint-Gobain's long-term growth interests. So I think that they're out there looking for you. So, I think that, if you do a bit of research about the company and the venture group and what they do, I think, adapting your pitch deck a little bit to, to the audience, and trying to build in, a little bit that, is going to catch the attention, even if it's the vocabulary. I mean, we tend to think about, construction productivity and building performance and sustainable buildings and things like that. So, they're not, everybody uses different terms to describe these things. But if you go and look at Nova's website, I mean, you'll see what they call target areas or focus areas, and they'll have the descriptions, and, using those buzzwords so that, when PitchBook or CB Insights is, as a little blurb on you, it's gonna help to catch the eye. But I would say, I've always kind of thought about it more as the responsibility of the corporate venture capital group to be available and visible so that startups can reach us. So, I think it certainly works both ways. But I think if you wanna be noticed, definitely do some research, and don't be afraid of, cold calling, or, the effect of, sending an email through the website, because we look at them all. It's
That's
not like we
amazing.
just blow them off. I mean, every email that comes in to the Nova mailbox, someone looks at it, and I'm virtually certain that, if it's something that fits within one of our areas, there'll at least be a follow-up to kind of learn more. So
If for most people who don't know, is there like a fund for that you guys have that you have to invest through, or there really is? There is. It's not like a traditional VC, right? Like,
no, we don't. We invest off the balance sheet, so we have kind of. And again, these things can change, but while I was there, the way it worked is that we had kind of an amount that we targeted investing each year. We never reached that amount in terms of the total investment size. It was at 20 million euros was the window that we tried to work within. And we just, it was an evergreen, viewed more of as an evergreen thing. It's not like we've got $300 million that we're going to deploy. And once we kind of deploy that 300 million, we're done. It's,
right.
it's more the mindset of we want to learn. The company wants to be open to new and disruptive innovations in our space. And so we don't want to have a valve that opens and closes. We just want to have a steady flow and try to, identify the most, interesting startups where we can bring the most value and keep working with them year over year in an evergreen way. And I think that ultimately, I'm sure that will evolve into a particular, amount of asset under management over time. What that number will be, I have no idea. When I retired, it was around like 150 million euros is what the total assets were that we had under management in terms of fair market value. Um, so I don't know. Who knows? In the future, that might change, but at least while I was there, that's how we looked at it.
I love it. You're retired now,
I
so
am.
tell me a little bit about retirement. What are you focused on? What are you doing these days?
So, it's been 6 months, and I have to say, I've really enjoyed kind of slowing down the pace of life. I mean, not as many Zoom calls or Teams calls as before, not a lot of meetings at 7 in the morning. I've been spending, now it's springtime here in the Northeast, and so I'm spending more time in my garden, getting the vegetables ready. The apricot and the plum trees are just about ready to bloom. But I do stay kind of connected to the venture community. Through my time as leading the venture team, I met some entrepreneurs that are active in Armenia. And I've been working with the American University in Yerevan to help them in mentoring some of the startups that are coming through their entrepreneurship programs. They have this really cool program called EPIC that they do, I think a number of different cohorts where they have a group of founders that come in with ideas and they help them kind of get it to the point where, it's very early stage stuff, but getting to the point where they can begin to imagine getting some venture funding. And so, I mentored two startups in the cohort that works through I think December, January. And there's another one starting actually. I think the kickoff meeting is later this week. So it keeps me a bit connected. Once in a while, someone from Saint-Gobain calls me to see how things are going or to ask a question. That's always fun to do. But honestly, I'm kind of enjoying a bit of a slower pace of life.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today, Minas. We really appreciate it. That wraps up our session. Thank you for sharing your insights, your personal journey, and all the things you've learned throughout your career. I could go on for hours, but I want to be respectful of your time.
Hamlet, thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Of course. If anyone wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that? Is it via LinkedIn or what would you?
Yeah, I think I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn pretty easily. Not too many Minas Apelians in the search, so you should be able to find me, and I'd be happy to hear from you.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we hope today's conversation has sparked some new ideas and enthusiasm for making a positive impact through ventures, particularly looking at corporate venturing. Keep pushing forward until next time. Thank you.